Mr. Mayor, it is 7 o'clock. Would you like to call the meeting to order? You're muted, sir. I assume the mayor will be back in a moment.
Mr. Mayor, I think you turned your video off instead of turning your audio on.
You want me to run to his office?
Yes, please.
Are we good now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's call this meeting to order. City of North Kansas City, Missouri, regular council meeting, and motion to close part of the meeting amended July 21st, 2020. Call a roll.
Councilmember DeLong,
Here.
Councilmember Saper,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Toll,
Here.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember DeLong, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Let's try this unmuted.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Toll,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The next item is comments from the public. Tonight, for the first time since we've begun meeting virtually, we are allowing members of the public to join the meeting and to be able to speak during comments from the public personally to the council. In addition, anyone who wished to was invited to send an email to us, and I do have several comments from the public to read, but first we will entertain any comments from the public from anyone who has joined the meeting. Those who've joined the meeting can do so one of two ways, either online, in which case they may make comments by using the raise hand feature of Zoom, and then the meeting host, Stephen Roberts, our IT manager, will call on them. Or if they are joining by phone, they may use *9 to indicate that they would like to speak. So with that, Stephen, is there anyone online or on the phone who wishes to speak? And if so, please bring them on.
Okay, we currently have one person with their hand raised. So just to reiterate, if you would like to speak, use the raise hand feature if you're using Zoom, or press *9 on your phone, and I will introduce you and unmute you. So the one we have right now is Gloria Bohm. Probably pronouncing that wrong. I apologize. But you can unmute and start talking. You have 5 minutes.
You had that correct. So, well, hopefully you have heard on email already from some people who are bringing forth the recommendation to remove the North Kansas City ordinance that is 9.12.080, which authorizes private citizens to use deadly force against other citizens under circumstances when making a citizen's arrest. So I would like to recommend that that be removed. It's something that appears to have been enforced in terms of, for example, what happened with Ahmaud Arbery. And that in light of how much of a light we are shining on laws like this that may not have served Black and Brown communities, for example, that we can really examine things like this that reduce the equality for the true equality for all people in this country and in our cities and towns and villages. So that is mostly what I have to say. I think it was clear enough. I don't know what the next steps are after making a recommendation like this on behalf of the community. And thank you for your time.
Okay. Currently, no one has their hand raised. Oh, actually, we do have another one. Okay, the caller is the online person, I should say, Denise. Hold on 1 second. Well, Denise, I see that your hand is raised, but you do not have your audio connected or something, because it's not giving me the option to unmute you. I'm not sure what I can do about that.
All right, Stephen. So if that somehow gets corrected, then perhaps you could let us know. But
Okay, I think actually it's on now, Eric. My apologies.
all right, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, I was showing unmuted. Thank you for your allowing me to speak. The first person actually asked my highest priority. I too am very horrified to find out that we have that ordinance still in effect, and I strongly urge you to get it off the books. I don't care if you put something more realistic, but that in my reading is worse than the one that allowed Ahmaud Arbery to be killed by citizens. Okay, so the second one that I would say is my next priority is the LVNR restraint that the police here are allowed to use. And again, with the current situation across the whole United States, actually the whole world now, because of what is happening here, people are looking at it, and it doesn't need to be used. And why North Kansas City allows it, I don't know, but I think we have the police force that can be better. And I don't know, I don't want to make the news for us being terrible. So I would urge everyone to work together and make it happen to where we are actually a place we can be proud to live, instead of somewhere that we're embarrassed to say it used to be a sundowner town. And I'm fine with saying it used to be a sundowner town, but I do not want it to still apply. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions if you want to know what any of the other citizens are asking.
Denise, can I get your last name for the record, please?
Decker, D-E-C-K-E-R.
Thank you.
I signed in with an email. It's got that in it.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak by raising their hand or pressing *9 on their phone? Well, Mr. Berlin, nobody else is raising their hand, so actually,
All right.
did. So please, folks, if you do want to comment, go ahead and raise your hand now, and we'll just get to you in order. So Jessica Loya, you should be able to unmute and talk.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so with Denise and Gloria, I also wanted to bring up the ordinance 9.12.080, which authorizes private citizens to use deadly force against other citizens under certain circumstances when making a citizen's arrest. And I also agree that this needs to be repealed. It's not in compliance with federal laws and has no value in our community. My understanding is that the men who chased and shot and murdered Ahmaud Arbery attempted to use that defense, a similar ordinance. And it's my opinion that what happened to Ahmaud Arbery shouldn't ever happen, and there shouldn't be an ordinance that exists to defend murder. That is my first issue. My second, I'd really like us to look over the Safe Residence program. It's in conjunction with the police department and landlords, is my understanding. The program itself sounds more like it serves the landlords and their ability to evict than it actually serves the residents who live within those buildings. I'm not really sure what we can do about that. I know we've discussed it, a couple of other citizens, and either completely get rid of that program to put those funds elsewhere, or potentially just re-evaluating that program and seeing what we could potentially do to make it better to where it actually serves the citizens and the community and the people, the tenants who live in those apartment complexes. Those are my main issues.
I'll call on Councilmember Toe. We don't usually have a back and forth with folks. Okay.
As of now, there's nobody with their hand raised. Again, does anybody else wish to speak?
All right.
Your hand is raised. We typically allow people one shot at speaking. We don't do back and forth. I apologize.
Is there anyone who has not spoken who wishes to speak, Stephen?
Nope. Looks like we're all done. I think we're done at this point.
All right. Well, as I mentioned then, I also did receive several. We did invite people to continue submitting comments by email if they wished. I guess we'll continue to do that unless council would prefer not to. So I will go ahead and read these 4 comments from the public. One moment. All right. The first comment is from Bart German, and it reads, my name is Bart German and I live at 715 Armour Road, apartment 807. I've been a resident here for 1.5 years and have lived in the area and worked at Cerner Corporation since 2001. I want to leave a comment regarding the Armour Road Complete Street Project Public Meeting Next Steps agenda item from the July 21st, 2020 agenda. When I moved here, the walking distance proximity to the downtown shops, restaurants, and theater were the largest positive impact on the decision. And with the completion of the Complete Streets project a few months after arriving, I noticed a drastic improvement in the walking experience around downtown. Whether it's during high volume daytime hours or nearly deserted hours at night, I feel much more comfortable and safe than I did prior. Drivers are slower and further away, and people passing through that are more likely to be inattentive and wanting to get through quickly are less likely to use the corridor. This project has been a great quality of life improvement for myself and my 2 teenage children as we take advantage of the many locations downtown. I hope the council will maintain this configuration as it is today and not regress to an earlier configuration. Thank you, Bart German. The next comment is from Charles Cash, 408 East 30th Avenue. Thanks to all elected and appointed officials and employees of North Kansas City for their commitment to keeping the city, its business and residents and visitors safe and sound during the current situation. Also, thanks to the hardworking staff and volunteers at North Kansas City Hospital for their dedicated effort to keep the people of the Northland safe and well. Tonight, the council will consider allowing the non-wearing of masks inside the YMCA and other exercise facilities. I believe this would be a critical mistake. When people exercise, their exhaled breath and fluids greatly increase. It is this exhaled material that contains COVID-19 virus germs of an infected carrier. Based on medical facts, 1 or 2 cases today could lead to close to 200 in 3 weeks. The only way we are going to beat this virus is to control the spread. Remember, it is easier to exercise wearing a mask than it is exercising with COVID-19. The plans for the rebuilding of Diamond 1 and expanding the storage work building in Mackin Park look great. I fully support the plans. The next comment reads, is from Cameron Vaughn. It reads, Dear members of the City Council, I'm a recent transplant to North Kansas City from Kansas. Part of the reason I chose to live in North Kansas City is because of the proximity to my place of employment. What I have been pleasantly surprised to find is all of the other places that are in close walking distance to where I live. Among the places I enjoy walking most, either when going to work or walking my dog, is on Armour Boulevard. I will freely admit that I'm not a cyclist, but I am someone who enjoys the community feel that a place like North Kansas City offers. I have found that encapsulated in Armour Road, where traffic is calmer and people are able to enjoy themselves, be it on a bike or in a car. Armour Road may not be perfect, but it has proven to be better than it was before, and things like the bike plan you are considering offer another chance to make the sort of modifications and improvements that will make us safer, more vibrant, and happier. We need to seize this chance, and we can do part of that by adopting the bike plan and modifying Armour Road as needed. Please vote in favor of the proposed bike plan. And the last comment that was submitted is from Richard Lanning, president of NT Realty. And it reads, I noticed the City Council will be discussing the requirement to wear masks at exercise facilities during the July 21st regular council meeting. As you know, we own the retail building located at the northwest corner of Burlington and 26th Avenue. Zone 6 Fitness operates a large fitness facility within our building. Similar to YMCA, Zone 6 is having a difficult time maintaining current membership and recruiting new members as a result of North Kansas City's mask ordinance. He did attach a copy of Clay County's masks requirements. As you can see, Clay County does not require masks while exercising indoors or outdoors. On behalf of Zone 6 Fitness, we would like to make a request of the City Council to modify the city's facial covering requirements to allow fitness facility members the ability to remove their masks once they reach their exercise destination. Thank you for your time and consideration. And that concludes comments from the public. The next item is the consent agenda, consisting of one item, item 6, consideration of approval of the regular City Council meeting minutes of July 7th, 2020.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Toll,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 7, Mackin Park Ball Field Design Presentation and City Council Approval.
Thank you. At its meeting of March 3rd, the City Council approved a award contract for design of renovations to Mackin Park Ball Field Diamond Number 1 to the Clark Anderson Partners, who I'll refer to as Clark Anderson. Since that time, Clark Anderson has been working with a committee composed of representatives of the City Council, North Kansas City School District, and the Parks Board on design. Conceptual design has been approved by the committee and the Parks Board, and Clark Anderson will now present that preliminary conceptual design to the City Council for its review and approval. What we'd be asking for after they have concluded their presentation is for you to indicate that you do believe the design is appropriate and within budget and may proceed. So with that, I will turn a presentation over to Sean Ray of the Clark Anderson Partners.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here. It's been great so far working with everyone in North Kansas City on this Mackin Park project. A little bit about our firm. We're based here in Kansas City. We have our Kansas City office in the Crossroads, and so it's been nice working on a project so close to home. But we have a bit of a presentation today. The presentation is basically, it was us wrapping up our design development documents for the project. So it's a plan and a few renderings, and I'll talk through what some of the design looks like using some of the images from that presentation. So if we want to pull that up. So if everyone can see, this is kind of the plan overview, kind of outlining all of the changes for the project. You can see some of the existing buildings there to the left side, like there's a restroom building, shelter, an existing maintenance building, and they're all going to remain. But everything to the right of that around the field is what's going to be changing as a part of this project. So the main goal of the project was to have synthetic turf in the infield and the darker green kind of turf area, along with some of the darker brown, which will also be a turf product, just a different color. Can you hear me okay? It sounds like maybe I'm cutting out a little bit.
You're fine.
Okay. And then, so with the renovation of the field, we had to slide the field a little bit to the east in order to make room around the field. It's kind of a tight fit right now, immediately around the field. And so one of the goals with these improvements were to fix some of the dimensions of the field. So we have some additional room behind home plate. Created that room by sliding everything a little bit to. You can see the dugout locations at first and third base with behind the dugouts. That lighter gray, there's some bleacher areas with 250 seats. So it's a reduction from what there currently is, but after talking to the users, it seems like an appropriate number of seats. Currently, maybe there's a few too many seats. New press box location, and then one of the big changes here too was creating some green space just south of the field by removing some of the, there's a lot of additional pavement there that's just striped. And so we took out some of the pavement. There is a slight reduction in parking stalls, as you can see, but it's not a huge amount to impact these fields. And then I guess I'll mention too, to the north, along the third baseline, we're showing batting cages pretty close to their current location, but just upgraded. Overall, the field dimensions 325 feet at the baseline, 335 at third base in the outfield, and then center field is 365. We can go to the next image. So here are a couple images. We did some 3D images to kind of give a better idea of what this might look like as you're entering the park here on that top image. This is coming from the parking lot, walking toward the field. So you can see we have a higher backstop. It's a netted backstop. It'll be about 4 feet tall. And then the image below that is what the dugouts look like. We're using some of the design cues from the existing and restroom building out there. So you see the green roof, some similar colored concrete block on the walls there with the bullpen behind it. Next slide. So this top image here is looking back at home plate from near first base. But you can see on this top image the dugout again. At the left side of the dugout, there's a storage closet. We have storage closets that we're showing at each of the locations. And this rendering, I've talked with Kelly about this pretty extensively. This rendering shows a backstop with the North Kansas City High School Hornets. So as a part of this project, there'll be 2 sets of pads so that, you know, when it's being used for the high school, it's identified as the high school field. And then when it's being used by the city of North Kansas City, it'll have the parks logo on it. We will have another rendering coming up that shows that. And then again, that second image there showing the batting. Next slide. This is kind of an example, that top one showing what the North Kansas City backstop padding might look like with the green city's logo. It's kind of small there, but it's kind of we're a little far away from it in this image. And then that second image, again, closer up to the dugout with the North Kansas City padding on that backstop. Next image. And so in in these images, we're showing the 2 different configurations. This field will be used for both baseball and softball. As I've noted, all of the infield is going to be synthetic turf type material. So even where it's brown, it's going to be a turf type material. The baseball field is striped permanently to be used for baseball, and then it can be used for softball alternatively with some additional striping at home plate, and then moving the bases up. The baseball layout that you see on here uses a portable pitching mound, so it's brought onto the field just for the baseball configuration. Otherwise, it's just the green turf beneath that portable mound. Next slide. So our last 3D image here, we're just kind of ending with a kind of a nighttime shot shown on that back side of that backstop where we could have the Parks and Rec logo potentially, but this kind of gives you a good viewing angle from where the spectators will sit. You know, one of the benefits to doing a netted backstop like we're showing is that you don't have the heavy duty structure that you see sometimes with you know, typical chain link fencing. Just because it's so heavy, it requires a lot of structure. So with the net, you know, you just have a couple of posts and the viewing angles are a lot better for the fans. And then again on this one, just to the left of that center bleacher, there's that press box that's there. The next slide. Just to touch on budget and our cost estimate. This is kind of a breakdown of what we're looking at for the budget. You can see that we are currently just under our budgeted amount with a project estimate of 1.1 million, the budget being about 1.1. So these were design development documents. We're currently working through construction documentation to turn these into documents that a contractor can bid and build off of. And as we're doing that, we're finding additional efficiencies as well as we really dive into some of the details. You know, we believe we'll see this number come down even a little bit further. And that was it for this presentation, Eric.
Are any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember DeLong and then Councilmember Clevenger.
Yeah, so one, can we get that PDF sent to us as well so we can take a closer look? I don't know if that'd be
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And then, so I had a couple questions about the field too. So when you convert it to a baseball field, what happens with the outfield fence first? I'm sorry, when you convert it to a softball field, what happens to the outfield fence then? Is that just a temporary fence that's brought in? Is there going to be like some sort of anchors, or are they all just set in place for the outfield fence for softball?
Yeah, so through the meetings we talked with the city of North Kansas City currently has a fence that they use for softball games, and it just stakes into the ground. And so that's currently we're planning on using that system. They are confirming with another person on their staff who I think was currently on vacation. They're going to confirm with them as to whether or not maybe they want to look at sleeving it instead, but we would recommend the staking option, which I think is the fence that they currently do have at the city or the high school.
Okay. And then second question on the netting on the backstop. How often does that need to be replaced, and how much does that cost to replace that netting?
Yeah, Eric Casper, I don't know if you want to chime in or not, but you know, we've talked a bit about that with the park staff. You know, the main concern with the netting is just the degradation that happens with sunlight. And so it can be removed seasonally. The problem here is, you know, this is a field that may be used year round, so it may be left up.
Right, and most of the time the netting systems are left up. The ones that we've seen, taking them down and putting them up, they last longer. They do have a UV protectant coating on them. I believe the warranty on them is 10 years. We can find out what that is for you.
So did you cut out there? Did you say a year? I couldn't hear.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said 10. Okay, 10. Okay.
Yeah, roughly 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's about the same length of time you would get out of a chain link fence too, with the galvanizing being, you know, will eventually wear out and then rust. That's a typical.
Okay.
timeline of that.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Clevenger.
So piggybacking on the netting question, about every 10 years, as far as the artificial turf, do you have a lifespan on that with the usage, if it's going to be used all year round? What as far as a lifespan on the artificial turf before it has to be replaced?
So the artificial turf has an 8-year warranty on it. Most clients and owners are looking at 10 to 12 years on the artificial turf replacement. Now, this depends on how often you groom it, maintain it, and the use of it. So if you're seeing a lot of high use in these turf areas, the replacement can be right at that 8 mark. Or if you really take care of it, do a grooming times a year, and a deep grooming maybe every 3 years, you can push that out to 10 to 12 years for a replacement cost on that. Now your batter's boxes and your areas where around shortstop, first base will wear out sooner. And with baseball, we design those areas with patch panels so that they can be swapped in and out, and park staff can do that quickly. We did go through and talk to them about steel cleats versus rubber cleats or molded cleats. And I think they've all said that everything's going to be molded cleats. Cleats will be replacing turf in the batter's box, 5 to 6 times a year, versus molded cleat, you could be replacing turf in those areas every couple of years. So as part of the design, we make sure that the owner is supplied with a number of patch panels that they can purchase through the life of the turf.
That's good. And as far as the grooming, how much does that usually run? Do you have a cost estimate on how much grooming would be?
Well, as part of the design, or as part of the bid, we actually have them include a piece of grooming equipment for the turf itself. So when the project is complete, the owners receive a grooming equipment that they can drag behind a gator or a small UTV vehicle, groom the field. That piece of equipment, it's similar to like a leaf rake system on your yard, just with different fibers and a collection system. So it'll collect sunflower seeds and pins, and all sorts of just kind of just random small stuff. That piece of equipment is fairly inexpensive, between $1,500 and $2,000, but it's usually, we make sure that it's included as part of the bid package.
Councilmember Stewart, and then Councilmember Saper.
Yeah, just one thing on the footwear. I doubt if any high school allows steel spikes anymore, but I think the park board should realize that when they rent it to adult leagues, make sure they can't wear steel spikes. And you may have to tell them, because I've umpired the senior leagues, and they wore them then, because I haven't umpired for about 8 years now. So, but anyway, it's just something for the park board to remember when there's other than school.
Councilmember Saper.
It certainly looks very nice, but since this project came before my term on the council, could someone quickly summarize why it's needed?
Yes, sir. I think that the general consensus was that the ball field was in a deteriorated condition in numerous ways. The high school had been asking for a long time. Drainage is a particular problem. The high school, which uses the field as its home field, had indicated that it was far worse than any of the other high schools' fields that they played on. They were looking for some equity. And so an arrangement was made between the city and the school district to jointly fund the renovation of this field, which, as I understand it, although I'm not as intimately familiar with it as some may be on, for example, Councilmember Stewart, that it had many deficiencies that needed to be corrected as far as the turf and the drainage and other aspects of it.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Clevenger.
Sean, quickly while I got you, I know during one of the discussions at the committee, we talked about that netting above the backstop at the very top to fend off foul balls from getting out and hitting cars. We had discussed possibly having it angle in a little bit at the top. Was that ever, it didn't look like it was there in the renderings. Was that written off, or was it like an ad alternate?
Yeah, I think the meeting following where you had requested that, we discussed that a bit, and as a group decided maybe not to go that direction. I think with the additional, we're looking at 40-foot high backstop here. It should prevent that from happening too often. And then also for the just ability for the park staff to replace it, it makes it a little more complex to have a netting that does bend over the top.
Thanks.
Councilmember Clevenger.
As far as I couldn't see on the budget slide, does this project have contingency, and are we still within with the contingency?
The project has some contingency, but not a lot. As we've gotten closer and tightening up the budget, we started off with some contingency. At this point, we've reduced that amount. And so as we've kind of tightened down the design and locked it down, it kind of built that into some of the numbers that we are showing.
So our contingency is in whatever the number is minus what the budget is. That's what we have left over for the contingency, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean some of the line items do have contingency built in just based on our estimate. But as we've kind of moved forward with the design, we've tightened down those numbers, and it's in a great spot right now.
Okay.
Councilmember Tall.
Will you be around for the next item? Because if you're not, I'd like to ask you about the maintenance building.
They will be around for the next item, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Saper.
Is the school district on board for repairs and maintenance of the field over the 10-year lifespan?
The school district pays an amount to the Parks Board, which is to help with the cost of maintenance of all the facilities that the city and the school district share, and that would include the ball field as well. But there's no specific arrangement with regard to the ball field other than paying for the capital costs of construction.
In your opinion, is that sufficient? Is that current arrangement sufficient to maintain the ball field over that 10-year period?
I don't know, sir, that I could venture an opinion on that at this time tonight.
Okay.
Councilmember Tull.
I don't think it would be up to the school district to pay for the full maintaining of the field because we will be using it. So it's a partnership, but they're not responsible for it solely going forward. It still belongs to us. They're paying to use it and they're paying to make this upgrade. So I wouldn't see that as being their responsibility.
Are there any other questions for Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember DeLong?
I was going to move to approve, but if Councilmember DeLong has another question, then go ahead.
No, I guess my question had went back to what I was asking earlier. Some other council members have asked just about the maintenance cost in general on this. So once this is built and constructed, the Parks and Rec Board will be taking this on and will be paying for the maintenance on it, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
I move to approve the design as presented.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Number 8, budget amendment, Mackin Park Maintenance Building Addition, resolution number 20-046.
Eric, do you want me to?
Excuse me, I was muted. Thank you. Kelly, I apologize. Kelly Batipka, the Parks and Recreation Director, was not expected to be here tonight, but had an emergency that kept her away from the meeting. So I will summarize her memo to you. The Parks and Recreation Board is seeking approval from the City Council for a budget amendment from the Gaming Fund in the amount of $200,000 for the design, construction, and contingency of a 20 by 30 addition to the existing park maintenance building at Mackin Park to be constructed in tandem with the renovation of Diamond Number 1. Parks and Recreation has an existing 20 by 30 maintenance building there at that location. It stores a number of pieces of equipment and other supplies to maintain the park system. With the growth of park amenities, services, and events, the existing maintenance building is too small to house everything that Parks and Recreation needs to maintain the parks and doesn't allow for any room for to conduct repairs or workspace. There's no HVAC system for staff to work on projects during inclement weather. So the Parks and Recreation Board and staff is asking for an addition which will store the maintenance equipment for the infield turf for Diamond Number 1, outfield maintenance equipment, and have a garage door facing the field for easy access. In addition, it would have an HVAC system for inside projects during inclement weather and add room to store event equipment and supplies instead of being spread out through the city's facilities. With the Diamond Number 1 renovation being completed in fiscal year 2021, with a projected completion to be by the beginning of North Kansas City's baseball season, which begins on March 1st. The Parks and Recreation Board and staff's desire is to have that maintenance building completed alongside the renovation of Diamond Number 1, which would eliminate a disruption in the use of a new state-of-the-art facility during North Kansas City High School and other organizations' baseball season. With that, the Parks Board has a resolution in front of you requesting a budget amendment for a transfer from the Gaming Fund to the Park Fund. for construction of this addition. Are there any questions, council member? I'm sorry, I'm not sure who I saw first. I'm going to call on Smith, Tull, and Farr.
And Eric, I just want to layer on the discussion you and I had and the discussions I've had with Kelly Batipka about this building. So when I saw the number of on the request, the $200,000, I pulled up the budget with the line items, and the line item for this building, raw build, is $162,000. So I spoke to Kelly, and she confirmed that 200,000 includes the next line item, which is an $11,340 for the design consultant fee, and then a contingency. And then she said she had just rounded up and assumed a larger contingency. After talking with her and getting the contingency more in line with what we were seeing on the overall ball field project, she agreed that a number with a 3% contingency would be $178,500. And then she was on board with having that as the budget amendment to put before us. So that's the number that I would put out there for the budget number, not 200,000.
Councilmember Tull, and then Councilmember Farr, and then Councilmember Stewart.
Okay, that changes things for me a little bit. My question was going to be about the cost, because I did see it was just over 11,000 for design, and that puts us in at over $300 a square foot, which seems really, really high for an outbuilding. Maybe if it brought it down, I'll have to relook at the figures. But what I was going to ask you, Sean, is there a reason for that? Is it the materials that are being used? Are you using a stone, perhaps? I mean, I can see why you might need the extra space. You've got a pitcher's mound that's removable. You've got the softball fence. But what do you think is driving up the raw build cost?
Yeah, thanks for that. We can touch on that. So, you know, the existing building that is currently out there, the existing 20 by 30 building, it's kind of being used like it is a kind of a maintenance building for doing work inside of it, but really is a large shed. There's no, I mean, the walls are really just the metal panels. There's no insulation. So this new building, it's going to be attached to it, but it is going to kind of be constructed as a standalone building because it is going to be insulated. We are going to have heaters in the space so that it can be used year round for maintenance and used more efficiently than their current maintenance building is. It's going to have dual garage doors on either side to allow access from the field and from the west as well. And one of the other things that's driving up the cost are some of the utility connections. We're having to do water connection here, and the closest water location is further to the south. So we are having to do some utilities to get here, along with a sewer. We're putting a drain within this addition as well. So the building as a whole is going to be a little bit beefier than what they currently have. And we do have some pictures as well, I think, in a part of a presentation that we can look at if you would like.
Yeah, that would be great. I was just trying to see how we got to that number.
Yeah, and the additional site work associated with it as well.
Okay.
Sean, I might add that we also have to tie in the roof structures together. So there's a little complicated piece there as well, tying the two roof structures together.
Would you like me to put up the second presentation now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And this just had a couple of slides, but Kelly wanted us to kind of show the council what some of the existing conditions were. So this is that existing 20 by 30 building, a few different angles. You can see on that picture on the bottom left that they store a lot of their smaller vehicles there. And so having access on the field side and on the west, they kind of have a yard area, would be nice to be able to access both the field as well for these vehicles. You can see on that top right photo, there's a lot of existing electrical work that's coming into the existing maintenance building. We had initially looked at tearing this down completely and building a brand new building, but all of these electrical panels started to complicate that. This is where a lot of the power is fed to much of the park. So we're leaving this existing building and then tacking on to the north of it. I think the next slide might have a rendering of that. So yeah, here on this slide, you can see the top image. Maybe the bottom image is better to start with. The bottom image shows that existing building, and the top image shows the existing building with the addition to the north. There would be a garage door on this side facing the field, and then a garage door on the other side facing away from the field you could pull through. So this is where that addition would go on the north side, kind of creating an L-shaped building.
So it would be the same metal material, but insulated?
Yeah, it would be built as a separate building almost entirely, just because it would need to be fully insulated. It would be a new structure. The structure of the existing building is a little bit less robust than what we would normally do. And so the structure of this will be a little beefier, but we'll have the roof expand over and have it look like it's one building, just from an aesthetic standpoint. And there'll be a door then between the two sides. And then I'm trying to recall what the third image here is, or the third slide here. Okay, yeah, so we just wanted to outline on this plan where that maintenance addition was going on the north side. So yeah, it's there in the dashed line.
Thank you.
Are there any other, let's see, Councilmember Farr and then Councilmember Stewart.
So first question I have is, how much more equipment are they going to store in this building besides what's going to be for Diamond One? My second question is don't we have to put this out to bid?
Well, to your second question, sir, it would be included in the bid for the ball field. It would be included as an element of the
so this 100
whatever
Jesse said, the 100 and what was it, Jesse?
178.5.
So the 178.5 is all inclusive. There will not be another dime more, correct?
We're not planning on, if we approve it, we wouldn't have, they would, if it went over that, it would be Parks paying for it.
Oh, they won't pay for anything because they're going to come to us. That's why I'm saying this is all inclusive. I mean, I don't want another dime more coming out of this.
That number is all inclusive.
Did you hear that, Eric?
Yes, sir. I heard what you said. That it will be bid out. The bids will come in. If they are over, we'll come to you and ask you what you'd like to do. But this is their estimate.
Have the parks pay for it. I mean, I've been down this road before.
Yes. What I understand your comments, sir. They are asking the city to pay for this with this budget amendment tonight. Let's see, Councilmember Stewart, and then Councilmember Clark, and then Councilmember Clevender.
Well, a few things. First of all, the building's needed. It should have been, the one they have now should have been double that size back when they built it. It's too small to start with, I thought. I have a problem with the price, of course. You're talking about 600 square feet. If you applied that to the homes in the new area, Jesse probably would have had to pay $1 million for his house. But you know, you get my drift here. 200,000. I mean, well, you had it down to 170-some thousand. Even that, you're talking about. I built a 20 by 30 with me and a couple of firemen on my farm when I had the farm, and I guarantee you, it did cost nothing like that. I don't see where the money's coming from. I know the electrical has to come in, the water has to come in, and so they're going to insulate it, yeah. And I didn't think that 200, when asking for 200,000, who else to use that figure? I didn't think that was part of the budget for the field. I thought we were going to, the field's 1 point whatever million, and then this is on top of that. That's correct, isn't it? Jesse?
Yes, sir, that is correct. It would be bid out at the same time as the ball field, was my point.
And it does, if it's going to have it, it does need to be done in tandem. You don't want to tear up the field type stuff. I do have one suggestion. The park board won't like it because, just like Tom said, they don't like paying for anything out of their own budget. they could have a deal cut just kind of like the high school where, okay, we'll pay for that building. And then every year, so much money out of their budget has to come back to us like the school's going to do. I'm just like Tom, you know, they ask for everything. And I'm not, you know, saying anybody's, you know, a good person that's on their board and how they spend their money. I think they're misdirected sometimes. I don't know. But I would like to throw out there and see what people think about them paying some of this back over the time out of their budget.
Councilmember Clark, and then Councilmember Clevenger, and then Councilmember Smith.
To one point, I know being now on the Parks Board, the last meeting I sat in, one of the big indicators was that doing it at the same time was just beneficial, obviously, to try to save money overall, doing the construction at the same time so they're not overlapping, kind of to your point too, Richard, that, you know, tearing things up, might as well do it all at the same time. So projects tend to be a little less expensive when we can nail down two at the same time. I would be open to that idea that the parks sort of offer some contributions, maybe on a yearly, monthly, whatever basis. I don't know if that's a common thing, but yeah, much like we're expecting maybe the school to start paying toward. I think we eliminated the fact that the school district would start paying toward, like, as a monthly maintenance fee for the ball field, right? Lisa, did we said no, that they would not be contributing to that?
That's not the maintenance. They got to pay back so much for the whole project over the years. Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah. Then that's agreed too. But for this building, we're saying, you're suggesting then the Parks Board kind of offers some contribution in a lengthy, you know, over time sort of period while we sort of front load it from the gaming funds. Yeah. Because I'm a fan of it being done at the same time. I just feel like it is something that's needed. And if we can nail it down at the same time, but also stick within the budget. I haven't obviously been here long enough to know about budgets going over, but I assume that always happens. Tom Parr feels pretty strong about it. But that's it.
Councilmember Clevenger, and then Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, certainly. I don't doubt that the building is, you know, extra space is needed. My question about is, you know, also on the addition of the building, the HVAC, the heating and cooling. You'd say for working on special projects in inclement weather, I'd be interested to know in what those special projects are, because the building they have now is not heated and cooled. So that may be an aspect that may be able to help on the price. I am in indefinite agreement with Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Farr, that, you know, some sort of, Councilmember Clark, that some sort of repayment plan. That's, you know, something that I threw out in the beginning, is maybe sharing in the cost, whether it be half and half. You know, and I think there are certain things that we can do to this building to maybe even, not to make it cheap, but to lower the cost. I'd be really interested to see what those special projects are that they need the heating and cooling for.
Councilmember Smith.
Okay, couple things to unpack on those. This is just from my recollections on our parks, our committee for the ball field. I don't believe, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there's AC going into this. Then that was a cost lowering aspect. We're just doing heaters, right?
That is correct. We're doing ceiling hung heaters and then fans as well. So yeah, no cooling, but heating.
Yeah. So it's not a full ducted HVAC. This is more of a, so they can survive in the winter time when they're doing projects and moving things in and out.
Yeah, it is going to be like a commercial garage space, or, you know, we've done other park maintenance facilities, and usually in areas like this, it's just heating, not cooling.
Okay. Second piece, and I've spent more time than I care to admit learning about budgeting and parks and how they're funded and how our park spends their money. I learned that the state caps the amount of tax can be allocated to a park. So our parks are confined to the tax that they get. Given COVID this year, their programming is way down. They're not getting the revenue that they had expected. They're not, you know, the spring sports have been decimated. The shelter rentals are down. There's a lot of things that are taking their funding down. And then this project, as Rick noted, and I agree with this entirely, this is a necessary thing. This is something that's going to be important to the park, to keeping the maintenance up for their staff. So this is a necessary item. And when when we have a necessary capital expenditure, we go to the gaming fund for that. Otherwise, we use our revenue from taxes and our other miscellaneous income to pay for our operating. And the park does the same thing. They've done well using their money. Over the last few years, they've actually been running in the black. So they've been able to contribute to the reserves. They've had a 1 year where they didn't. They ran a deficit. But they're using operating money for operating, and this would be a capital project that I see fit to use the gaming fund for, which is how we do it as a city. And it would be a little bit disingenuous to hold them to a different standard. That's my take.
Councilmember Saper.
Since we're clearly partially subsidizing the school district over the lifespan of the ball field, I cannot see why we would not partially subsidize the park department on their maintenance facility, which will be tied in to the ball field as well as the park itself. It makes no sense to me not to.
Councilmember DeLong.
Eric, this is for you. Are you comfortable with this coming out of the gaming fund? Because, I mean, as we mentioned, revenues for parks are down. The casinos were also shut down for 2 months. And we also have many city projects currently on hold as well.
Well, I will say, in all honesty, that when it was reported to me that there was unanimous feeling on the committee that this should move forward, I did have the thought, well, it's easy to say it should move forward when it's not your money being spent. But the gaming, as Councilmember Smith says, a gaming fund is large, is what the city use for capital projects. The park board does have a decent sized fund balance at this time. You could, if you wish, as part of your decision tonight, to have them do a cost share, I think maybe, there need to be more discussion with the park board. They're not able to answer that tonight. So I would go back to them and report what you have, if you choose to make that part of your action, and then we would probably come back and put this item back on your agenda for another action. But if the city council is comfortable with the idea of funding this out of gaming fund, it can certainly withstand the expenditure, if that's what you were asking me. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I would want to know the specifics on the repayment plan, though, before going forward with this project.
All right, sir. If that's the case, then I would recommend, if the council were agreed with you on that, then I'd recommend you did not take action on this resolution tonight, but let us bring it back to you at a future date. Councilmember Smith.
Eric, how soon would this, and Sean, you might be able to help with this, how soon would this need to be approved to get into the phase of construction with the ball field? Because if we delay too long, we may end up with a two-phase construction and costs go up.
Well, I can comment that, our plan right now is to send this out to bid. Just a second, sorry, I'm checking my date here. On the 13th of August. We can always have it as an alternate within our drawings, have that work as an alternate just so it does get broken out.
So thanks, Sean. If we do want to table it, we would need to have it at our next meeting so they could hit their bid and not interrupt the time frame. So if the council wants to push to have the parks repay over some time, we need to structure that. So I would move to table it until the next meeting pending Parks Board discussion.
I'll second that, and the Parks Board will have to maybe have a special meeting too before our meeting to discuss it, maybe. So I second your motion.
Wouldn't that be item 8 and 9?
Yes, sir, I think it would. Yes. So there's been a motion and a second to table the budget amendment that is before the council, with the understanding that that would also entail tabling the following item, the task order. Is there any further discussion on the motion to table? Councilmember DeLong and then Councilmember Smith.
And Mr. Garrett, do we have a specific ask though we're tabling this, but do we have a specific ask we're asking from the parks?
Yeah, I was going to clarify that.
Okay, sorry, then, okay, I'm done.
No, sorry, the motion wasn't particularly clear. Either way, this would need to come back to us at our next meeting for an up or down vote. We would be asking the Parks Department to propose a repayment plan to tell us, nope, all right.
I think we should set a plan ourselves. I mean, if you leave it to the Parks Board, they're going to pay maybe, I don't know, but they might pay the lowest amount possible. I think we need to set a standard with an offer. I mean, that's my opinion.
We would have to do that right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, we would, yeah.
May I suggest 50% over
That's what I was thinking.
over X years, and perhaps you could tell us how many years?
So 15% works out to how much money?
Of 178.
Yeah.
50 plus 34 is what? 84. Is that right?
Just do some math.
Maybe 50% over 3-4 years. I wouldn't want to go past 4.
Now, did you say 50% or 15?
Well, I said 50. I said 50, but whatever number you are comfortable with.
It would come
with 50.
Do they have it in their budget to do that? I mean, that's a big number.
That's the thing. You know, they're working on keeping their operating budget balanced. This is a capital project. It seems to be like our gaming fund makes the most sense to do this. I'm not sure why we're asking them to repay on a capital project.
I think it would come out of the reserve fund over years.
I have no concept of how big that is. Sorry, Brian.
$325,000 right now. And it's dwindling with COVID.
Councilmember DeLong.
I mean, I did want to clarify my comment. I mean, my comments are more just in regards to what our financial position is, and also noting that we are holding some of our projects. I really don't have a problem with paying for this, so I just wanted to clear that up. I mean, I just wanted the full picture to be out there for everybody. Is what I was going for there.
Councilmember Smith.
Okay, Eric, I'd like to withdraw my motion. I would like to move to approve the maintenance building at $178,500 from the gaming fund.
Second.
All right. So, Councilmember Clevenger, are you okay with proceeding with the other motion? You had seconded the original tabling motion. Would you be okay with?
We can withdraw it and vote on it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So there is a motion and a second before the council to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $178,000 to fund the construction of the maintenance building.
Not that it matters to be too specific. 178,500.
All right, forgive me. So the motion is $178,500 for the design and construction of the maintenance building. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Tall.
The only thing I have is what other people have asked, and I don't think we can get answers tonight. Except for if it's not a full HVAC system, like I was originally thinking, how much does a shop style heater cost? How big of the budget is that piece?
Yeah, I'll comment that, we have mechanical engineers within our firm that have helped put that together, and I'm not certain myself on what that system.
Because it may not be very much, I'm not sure.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, just real quick, when you build something like that, is there really a necessity to pay for the I forgot the word I wanted to use there, but the design of it? I mean, the mayor built one that double that size right down behind McDonald's. Do you need an engineer for a 20 by 30 metal building?
Clark Anderson, would you like to comment on Councilmember Stewart's comment?
Yeah, it sounded like the question was asking whether or not you would pay to. I guess I think I understand the question. I think that sometimes with a building like this, you can rely on the metal building manufacturer for the design of it. Something like this will be probably stick built on site, similar to the construction used for the other portions of the project, like the press box and then the connection to the roof as well. We have our structural engineers looking at how the two roofs can connect. I do agree, you can reach out to a metal building manufacturer, just kind of put up a metal building based on their designs. They have the ability to stamp it with an engineer seal for local city approval, but this building is something a little more than that.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be recognized for a question or comment? All right, then Madam Clerk, excuse me, Councilmember Stewart.
Just real quick, I want this to be done, and I probably will vote for it. But if we vote to do it, if it passes, we can still address the issue later of the park board making contributions. It's up to us to bring it up again. I know they won't bring it up. I know that's what Zach's thinking, Tom. But we can bring it up ourselves later on. I just don't want to slow it down. And it is capital. And I have some of the same fears that Brian has. We don't know what we're going to have coming in on that gaming fund. And we got a lot of things we had to put on hold already. Some real expensive stuff. And sales tax are going to be way down. And that's the problem I had with just flat out funding it, but we'll see.
Councilmember DeLong.
Okay, so we haven't you're more in a budget season. We haven't seen the budget yet. Are there any other capital improvement asks from the Parks Board in the next fiscal year?
Yes, they are going to be requesting about $131,000 for the renovation of the Wheel Park Trail.
Okay, and that was the only one.
That's the only one from the gaming fund that they are requesting in fiscal year 2021. Yes, sir.
And that is needed, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No more for me.
Are there any other questions and comments before the city clerk calls the roll? Councilmember Tull.
Okay, sorry, last comment. I think part of the issue of paying for the design of it is they're tying in that roof, which isn't going to be simple. I mean, if we wanted to have a separate outbuilding that was in the same general location, I think you could probably find a cheaper route. But if you're going to tie it into the existing building, it's going to take a little more than just putting up a building that looks like that, but next to it.
Any other questions or Councilmember Clark?
Can he speak to that? Just to her comment, like if it's so necessary for us to connect the two buildings, because I would agree that would be a larger portion of the engineering is connecting two buildings.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And so it's not only connecting to the two buildings, it's running water and sewer to the addition, which are not in the current building. Also doing electrical, which, of course, a contractor can design as well before they install and the city, but we have electrical engineers on staff already working on the project. So they're able to help with that. I do agree, it can be done, with a metal building manufacturer, but it would probably have to be a freestanding building, not connected to the existing building.
So I guess my comment to piggyback on that is, what is the benefit of connecting to the existing building versus not? I guess we're all trying to understand the cost difference in that and trying to find ways to make this more cost effective, but still meet their needs for storage.
Yeah, so the way the building, initially the Parks Department had the idea of expanding this in order just to kind of increase the footprint, but they wanted the whole thing to be conditioned so that they could use it year round. The issue, of course, is that the existing building does not have any sort of insulation, and the existing building really is more like a shed. And so, you could almost think of this new building, the new addition, as being used year round with a shed portion attached to it that's easily accessible with a direct connection and a door.
Councilmember Smith.
Oh,
sorry, you had your hand up a while ago, so I thought you did.
Thanks for looking out.
Is there anyone else any questions or comments before we vote?
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Tall.
Just one more. The reason why I have all these questions is because we don't have a break. Money's coming from moving the water lines. That's not fixed by doing any other design. I don't think the design costs are excessive. It's just we don't know what the different pieces of this building are going to cost. And I think we are all a little bit nervous about funds going forward. So that's just why it's making it difficult. But I agree, we want it to happen at the same time that everything else is happening, and they do need it. It's just hard to pick out what's maybe flexible, something we could change to save a little money, because we don't have a breakdown of the costs. But maybe Kelly would have had that.
Councilmember DeLong.
And on that though, we're going to get the bid back, and we're going to have to approve it, correct? So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so so we're going to have another chance to see it as well before a final expenditure of the funds. So that's all.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $178,500? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll? Please do.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Toll,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
No.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
No.
6-2, motion carries. Number 9, approval of design task order for Mackin Park Maintenance Building Addition, resolution number 20-047.
Thank you. So in the item that you just considered, you approved a budget amendment for an addition to the maintenance building at Mackin Park. Now before you is a task order with the Mackin Park Ballfield Diamond & More designer, the Clark Anderson Partners, for the design of the maintenance building addition in the amount of $11,340. Are there any questions or is there any discussion?
I'll move for the approval of resolution number 20047.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Toll,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
No offense to Clark Emerson, but no.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
No, ma'am.
6-2, motion carries. Number 10, approval of bicycle master plan, resolution number 20-044.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Bicycle Master Plan is a long-term guide for investments and actions by the city over the next 20 years. The plan was developed via community input and feedback, including a 15-person advisory committee, 3 community meetings, including one focused on the business community, focus groups, online survey, a demonstration project on Clark Ferguson Drive, educational programming, and direction from the City Council. The City Council considered the portions of the Bicycle Master Plan at the November 19th and March 3rd work sessions and gave direction to the planning team that was incorporated into the draft that's before you. This plan builds on the Master Plan's vision theme number 4, which is build a safe multimodal network and enhance the pedestrian scaled environment. The top priorities for the plan that were identified by the public include increased safety, grow local business, and enhance public spaces. The plan contains roadway analysis, a recommended network, methods to track and measure progress towards its goals, and a guide for future projects. The plan also emphasizes facilities that serve all ages and abilities and will be part of the city's Communities for All Ages implementation. Adoption of this plan would qualify North Kansas City for gold status in Communities for All Ages. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember Farr.
Councilmember Farr can go ahead.
If this thing gets approved, it's not going to go to the Planning Commission until April 2nd of next year?
It would go to the next Planning Commission meeting. That's currently not scheduled.
That's not what it says here.
Councilmember Farr, I apologize. As you may recall, this was going to be on the March 17th agenda, and then that was the first meeting in which we were meeting under the COVID crisis, and apparently the memo did not get changed. But so it was going to go in April, back when we had this on your agenda in March, and apparently when this memo was put together, that failed to get updated. So we apologize for that, but it will go to the next Planning Commission meeting. Councilmember Smith.
I move to approve the bicycle master plan.
I'll second it.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
I'm sorry, was there any discussion? I was muted, but was there any discussion? Further discussion? Okay, now please call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Tull?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
7-1, motion carried. Number 11, facial coverings requirement at exercise facilities.
Thank you. So in the last week or so, city staff has been contacted regarding issues regarding the city's facial coverings requirement as it pertains to the North Kansas City YMCA. The Y has asked that the City Council consider amending this order to allow members to take off their masks once they reach their exercise destination. Staff has also been forwarded resident questions about the city's mask requirement as it pertains to the YMCA natatorium. So staff seeks council direction as to if it would like to modify the city's facial coverings requirement in response to these concerns. And I believe that both Gary Lynn, Senior Vice President of the YMCA of Greater Kansas City, and Tina Weaver, the Executive Director of the North Kansas City Y, are in the meeting if you had any questions for them. Councilmember Smith.
Hey, Gary and Tina, thanks for being here. I was the one who asked for the social distancing exception to be removed from the order. So I would like to ask the two of you, because I believe you to be responsible people. I read the email. It was very well written. But I'm curious why you believe it would be safe for the public to remove face coverings during exercise, particularly treadmill and cardio-based exercise where, people are breathing more heavily.
So I think it's a good question. And I probably wasn't going to come on and give a presentation in terms of, hey, here's what we think is the absolute 100% right thing to do. It was probably more along the lines of, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood some of the restrictions that the Y put in place when we did reopen and how that was going in terms of safety, as well as in terms of overall financial and impact that we're having on our staff and our center. So I know Eric probably knows a lot of this, but when we first reopened back on May 18th, we mandated that all of our staff will wear masks at all times. The only exception we have to that is when an instructor is teaching a group exercise class that we can maintain physical distancing, or a lifeguard that's in a natatorium in an elevated chair. Our staff takes temperature checks prior to walking in and doing their shift. We do a health screening survey with all of our staff that we monitor and review that. And then we also do hourly cleanings of our workstation and really have since May 18th. Our members, when we first opened, we put masks in place in common areas for them. We also did temperature scannings and still do, and anybody over 104 can't come in on that day. We do health screening questions with them related to both health and travel. And we've also eliminated any guests from entering our facilities during this time as well. And then on top of that, some of the building and operations, we've separated all of our equipment by at least a minimum of 6 feet. We've turned off every other piece of cardio equipment. We've purchased backpack sprayers that spray a substance called Rejuvenol that's on the list of CDC for one of the best things that can kill the virus. And we do that throughout the day. And we have basically implemented what is probably a 3-phased approach over the course of 3 to 4 months from reopening to bringing back our programs and services when we deem it safe. Since we've reopened, we have definitely seen slowdown in traffic, but we've also seen a progress in our members returning. The first week that we opened, we're about 20 to 25% of the normal traffic that we would have on a normal week. And as the course that we stayed open up until the last week of June, we were about 43%. So nothing ideal, I'll tell you, but definitely we're seeing a stronger trend towards that. Since we've implemented the last ordinance of masks, not just in common areas, but while members are working out, regardless of their length of workout or intensity level, our traffic has definitely seen an immediate impact, and we've dropped about 15% right away during those first couple weeks. Our July cancellations are at 262 memberships right now, which is on pace for double the amount of July from July of 2019. And our new joins is on pace for less than half of what we had of July of 2019. So I just feel like we have gone from doing what we feel was a very good plan to keep members safe and be able to promote membership and promote our programs with maybe the goal of doing as much we can to minimize a financial impact, to a position now over the last couple of weeks where we have twice the number of cancellations, we have half the number of sales, and thinking we're going to have a minimize the impact on our finances is not going to occur at all. I think the other issue that I'm a little bit concerned with is just the emotional and morale impact that can have on staff when they're put in some of these positions of having to enforce it. Our staff is required that we enforce this ordinance where everybody that enters our Y. But in line with American with Disabilities Act, you know, those members who inform us that they have a medical condition that are exempt, and for good reason they're exempt. However, the perception that occurs is that our staff is not consistent and not equitable in the enforcement of the ordinance, which ends up creating a hostile environment that neither our staff or our members really should want to experience. We've worked with our staff, attempted to train them on what we call listen first and diffusing hostile conversations. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said those interactions, they are difficult and they can be tough as well. So I think my point today was really just to communicate what we had put in place up to from May 18th when we first opened up until where we were leading up to July 2nd. And again, minimizing the financial impact, trying to work with our members and doing what we felt like was safety measures to keep in place. I would also tell you from the YMCA of Greater Kansas City, we have not experienced, or I'm sorry, we haven't been informed of a COVID exposure case up until from when we reopened till about 2 weeks ago, maybe about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We've still not had any at the North Kansas City Y that we have known about. And again, I'm not naive to think that we're not at the mercy of our members informing us if they are. But over the last probably 2 weeks, we've experienced, I want to say just shy of a half a dozen throughout our Ys across the city. And when we do experience those, we have a process in place that we investigate and interview the individual that notified us. We do what we call contact tracing and communicate to every individual that was in during that same time period that member was in and could have been exposed to them. And so that's gone, it's timely, but it's gone okay, and it's been minimal thus far. I hope it's been minimal because of many of the things that we've put in place back in May 18th. But I know that's a long-winded answer, but just trying to tell you that some of the things that we'd already put in place, and when we did them, I felt like they were, in many cities and many counties, they were more restrictive than what the cities and counties had put in place. That's obviously changed in North Kansas City. Kansas City Mo has increased their restrictions, but they also have an exemption for facilities that are exercising that can maintain a physical distance. Platte County just put something in place. They have an exemption for exercise that can maintain a physical distance. So I just wanted to bring it light today and let you know the financial impact. There's definitely an emotional impact on the staff as well. And then how we were doing leading up to July 2nd.
Any other questions or comments of Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember Tall?
Gary, thank you so much for that answer. That's very thorough, and the things you're putting in place, the screenings, the contact tracing, you're doing everything that you are asked and above and beyond. And I feel what you're saying very much so, that workout facilities are disproportionately impacted by these masking ordinances. The one real concern I continue to have is, as you mentioned, you're starting to see cases within the YMCA's. The numbers are going up nationwide. They're going up in Clay County. If we're really focused, and I understand the financial impact is real and the emotional impact to your employees, but if we're really focused on public health, I don't see how we can waive the masking, particularly when people are working out. As our comment from the public, Mr. Cash mentioned, people are expelling 2 to 3 times their normal amount as they're breathing out heavily. Even if they're 6 feet apart, they're still in an enclosed space. It's a difficult balance to strike. So where I'm at, as I would keep the masks in place. People also may be, canceling memberships because they just don't want to be in an enclosed space with a lot of other people, particularly while numbers are going up, and they would likely return once we have some normalcy. And I think masks are our best way at this point to get there. So that's my piece. I personally would stick with what we have, but I do appreciate what you're doing.
Councilmember Tall and then Councilmember Clevenger.
Yeah, I do understand that it's difficult. We all had a hard time with it when we originally did it with another local exercise place that was pretty vocal, but I agree, it's still inside. So the viral load is heavy, and as piggyback off of what Jesse said, you may be seeing memberships go down because of where we're at right now. So in a 7-day rolling average, right now we're at 362 cases a week, and on July 1st it was 204. So it's exploding right now. There's nothing in the numbers that would tell me we need to go backwards.
Councilmember Clevenger and then Councilmember Saper.
Certainly, it's a delicate balance. Public health, has to take a very important role, and looking at the financial and emotional aspect on the why. When we were talking about opening up at our meeting on May 5th, and when to open up and when to follow, a lot of people wanted to follow Kansas City, and Kansas City has an exception for workout facilities. It sounds like Parkville or wherever they said else that put one in has an exception for workout facilities. Certainly, it sounds like they're taking a lot of steps. They've got people at least 6 feet spaced out, a lot of times more, doing the heavy cleaning. I mean, I know the virus you can get anywhere from the grocery store, going out to different places. I understand with the exhalation in the gym, you're breathing heavier. I understand that as well. I don't know if they have any filters, air filters. I know the air conditioning units do, but Kansas City and Clay County and other surrounding areas are allowing for this. So, if we wanted to follow Kansas City in the beginning, why aren't we following them now on the YMCA? That's my question to other members that have concerns.
Councilmember Saper.
Clearly, your membership and use is down. It seems that people are voting with their feet, essentially, to protect their own safety. And what you're proposing is to make an even less safe environment for them. I don't see how that helps you at all.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I do, and I understand the problem. I can't exercise with a mask, and I'm sure not going to go into a public place without the mask. I have trouble breathing anyway, and the virus would kill me. But I do have to tell you, I've been a member of the Y since day one, and Marilyn and I continue to pay every month through our automatic pay. So you'll still have us as members, but it's a big risk. It's such a risk, and it's such a deadly virus. So that's my opinion.
So the question before the council is whether you want to take any action or ask the mayor to do anything differently with regard to the order in place. Does anyone have a motion? Councilmember Smith?
I would move to leave the order unchanged. However, I do have a question for the mayor. Mr. Mayor, as it sits, we are extended through August 1st. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a plan? Because I know other places have an indefinite, Kansas City has an indefinite one. Is there a plan to go ahead and get that extended?
If we feel that it needs to be continued, we will continue.
Okay. The end date on that order is before our next council meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Would you like to hear from us that, we would all like to have it extended beyond the 1st once we get to that point? Is that some guidance you would like to also hear while we're on the topic?
Yes, that would be good.
Okay. I would say that I'm hearing consensus, but we can vote on it. So my motion would be to leave the language unchanged and extend the order when it comes to expiration.
I second.
All right, so there has been a motion and second, but I'm seeing Councilmember DeLong and Councilmember Clevenger wishing to be recognized.
So there was a question before on what the recommended age. I don't know if this is necessarily germane to what was on our agenda, but there was a question before about the CDC recommended age in our order as well being different than what the CDC is actually recommending. Is that something we can look at and also have updated when we amend it?
Mr. Barzee and I have talked, and we've kind of figured that there might be different items coming out of tonight's discussion. And so, Tom, unless you have anything else to add, I think staff is prepared to whatever consensus council indicates regarding any changing of the order that you might decide on tonight. He would be prepared to draft.
And I was not fully prepared to actually mention this. This would simply be an age change, and I don't have the order up right now. But I believe ours said 10, and I think the CDC recommended, someone help me out here, 2, 3, or 4.
Age of 2.
Age of 2, there we go, thank you. If we could just align what is in the order to what CDC's actual recommendation is right now, that would be my only ask.
With regard to age
for, I can't remember how it's worded in there, minors. Yeah.
All right. Councilmember Clevenger.
Just a quick question. Doesn't Clay County have a mask mandate order until the 23rd of August? So would that not take preference? I mean, certainly we can extend our order. I don't know if we want to mirror the Clay County, but doesn't their order, if I'm correct, expire till on August 23rd?
Theirs does, but theirs is less stringent than ours. So, we can mirror their time frame if that's
I mean, to keep ours as the way it is, and that's fine. And as far as public safety, I think has to be paramount over everything else. But I mean, if we want to mirror Clay County, extend the way ours is until the 23rd, or do you want to do indefinite? I mean, I think the 23rd to mirror Clay County and see what happens after that. I don't know. So.
Mr. Mayor, do you understand or have you gotten a clear picture from us?
Well, my understanding was that, we have the opportunity to extend it, but we don't have any opportunity to back it up. And that's why we only went to the first of the month. And because if something's got better, then okay. But we can always extend it, but we can't back up.
It would take a vote of the council to back it up.
Yeah, it'd take a vote of the council. But I can extend it without a vote.
So I've heard two things. I've heard an extension to August 23rd, and I've heard having CDC recommendations with regard to minors incorporated into our order.
Correct. And it's in there. I will email you the details on that as well, just to be clear. I mean, I think the way the order is written, we're talking about one number change is all I'm really asking for on that. But I'll send it to you exactly.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else the council would like to do? You're going to have the opportunity on your next agenda item to discuss any further changes you might be interested in. But with regard to this item, those two things, anything else that you'd like to see changed in the order? All right, so Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
What are we voting on?
So you are voting on amending the emergency order in place to extend it to August 23rd and to incorporate CDC recommendations regarding minors. Councilmember Clark, are you asking to be recognized? Or?
Nope,
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
nope.
Sorry. Any further discussion?
Are we still considering this Jesse's original motion? Or is this...
I guess I rephrased the motion for him.
Yeah.
Jesse, would you?
I accept Eric's motion. We're just leaving.
I will second the motion. Now I think we're back on track. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Clark's already seconded the motion, correct?
Sure.
I thought I did.
Okay. All right. Councilmember DeLong.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Tull.
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Item 12, emergency order mass gatherings.
Thank you. Councilmember Tull has requested a council discussion and perhaps decision on the number of people allowed in mass gatherings in North Kansas City during this phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Councilmember Tull, perhaps that isn't exactly what you wanted to have discussed, but that was my best understanding of it. So
Do you mind if I clarify? Is that okay?
yeah, please do.
I was thinking specifically of parks and rec rentals, only the parks and rec rentals. And the reason why I was thinking specifically of those rentals and limiting them to 50 people instead of up to 250 people is because the Parks Department isn't really responsible for managing those rentals after they approve it on the weekends. And the police department has already expressed that they would prefer not to be the social distance police. If you look at those shelters that are approved to have 100 people, there's just no way, even with the picnic tables in there, you can cram in 100 people. Even if you spread out through the park, I think it would be very difficult to manage. So I wanted to do something about the parks and rec rentals that they were doing specifically for the shelters. And last thing, sorry, is that I know the Parks Board last week voted to keep the playgrounds closed off, which I completely understand. They wanted to wait until phase 3. Originally in phase 2, groups were limited to 50 people. We're still in phase 2. So I would recommend that the Parks Department goes back to 50 people since we really aren't there to manage the crowd.
So
And up for discussion.
I will call on Councilmember Farr and Councilmember Smith. I do want to let the council know real quick that the Parks Board did have a special meeting earlier today. They did have a discussion about the numbers for these kind of rentals. They did make a decision during their meeting not to make a change. And now you could add it to the emergency order in some way. So you could impose that, but they based upon their own discussion, they had not done that. The one decision they did make was to close 2 drinking fountains that had been put back on. I did speak for a little while to the park board president, Roberta Larson, today after their meeting. She did want me to know and wanted you to know that the Parks Department does require users to sign a contract that commits people to following the health guidelines in place in terms of masking and social distancing, but it is certainly true that enforcement is very much a challenge once the event itself has begun. Councilmember Farr and then Councilmember Smith.
You know, if that's the case, I think we need to put something into our order, because we can't tell the Parks Department what to do. I mean, they're their own governing body. I mean, if we can change something in our orders to limit that, then let's do it, because the Parks Department won't listen to us. I mean, because like I said, they govern the parks. It isn't up to the city to do that.
So if I understand, are you suggesting, sir, that if you limit the number in a mass gathering, that it be for any mass gathering in the city and not just a park rental?
Well, why not? I mean,
I understand. I just wanted to understand what you're
that's fine.
Yeah. Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Tull, and then Councilmember Clark, and then Councilmember Clevenger.
Okay, so I spent some time on the phone with the Assistant Director of Clay County Public Health Department, and spoke with her to find out why are we at 250? Because we are in phase 2, step 2 of the order, and phase 1 was 25. Phase 2, step 1 was originally 25. Phase 2, step 2 moved up to 50. And that's where we are right now. But the mass gatherings have had an exception, moved it out to 250. And she couldn't explain to me why that happened. And so I'm still at a loss, especially after seeing the gathering in the park from my front porch with 150 to 175 people. It's jarring to see that many people clustered together in our city, knowing the danger that's happening right now. So they couldn't give me a clear answer, and that was pretty troubling. But Eric, we can't, first off, I don't know that we could put something in our order that just specifically addressed the park. Do we have a clear definition of what constitutes a mass gathering? Because that's a pretty important piece of this. If we dropped it to 50, for example, what else is that impacting? So say people are at a restaurant and the occupancy is 100. Are they limited now to 50, even though they're not all there at a gathering? I'm not certain and I couldn't find it on the CDC's website. I couldn't find it on Clay County. Nothing defined a mass gathering narrowly.
Well, and I don't have it in front of me, sir, and certainly we're not experts at city staff. I guess I wouldn't think it would apply, say, to a restaurant, but I don't have a definition to give you as to what a mass gathering is. The one thing I was asked to let you know, that Ms. Vitipica would have perhaps liked to have spoken up at this point and just let you know that if you do, let's say, reduce the number to something like that, it would have an impact on a number of events and things like concerts and things like that, which probably would constitute mass gatherings that are planned by Parks and Recreation later this year. Yes, sir.
Could we limit mass gatherings with the caveat we could limit them to 50 where enforcement would not be in place? So if there's not somebody there to enforce social distancing, then we're limited to 50. But if somebody's there, they could go to the 250 as long as there's an enforcement agent of some kind, park staff, police officers, security that's been hired. If somebody can be there to enforce it, they could go to the limit.
Mr. Barzee, is that something you think you could draft if that was a consensus opinion of the city council?
We'll certainly make a try at it, that's for sure.
Okay.
You know, I don't know any legal reason we can't.
Okay. Councilmember Tull, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember Clevenger.
Okay, I just wanted some clarification, and Tom, this might be from you. Can we, as a city council, limit those reservations to 50 people without impacting the entire city? Is that something that we can do?
Tom, I think that comment was for you. Yeah.
I'm not sure how you would do that.
So you couldn't make an ordinance that was only for park rentals? Is that what you're saying?
I'd like to jump in for a moment. I do tend to agree with Councilmember Farr that the Parks Board is separately governed, and to make rules specific to the operations of the parks, I think perhaps it can be done, but it is not.
So my next question then, to piggyback on that, is like the movies in the park, they have a parks person there that's attending. Could we do something like Jesse said, like, do we have the power to say, if we don't have someone there to enforce the rules, then we cap it at 50, or is that also off the table?
I think if you applied it citywide, that's something that Councilor Barzee indicated he could probably work with. It's applying it only to North Kansas City Parks and Recreation that might be a little bit of an issue. Can I count on Councilmember Clark and Clevenger and then Councilmember Saper?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is I don't want to affect, for instance, the concerts in the park. That was really successful this last weekend. I know, Zach, you were in attendance. Everybody's seated 6 feet apart, and families being, closer together and things. That was really well attended. I have no idea how many people, but we were very, very, very spread out. And that's my biggest concern is having that affect those groups that, KC Symphony, obviously they're trying to expand out and get different things on the books for themselves. And just, I don't want to see us have to hurt our community gatherings when it's something that helps to serve our community as opportunities. But I do support the idea of what resolution do we establish and how do we go about it to kind of prevent what happened before with the 250 people under one shelter all gathered together. That's my input.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yeah, so to answer Amy's question, first of all, at the Symphony of the Park, I talked to Mindy Hart, had about 100 people. Again, we were spread out. Parks Department is really good about making sure people had their masks and people were spread out. That's something that I don't want to affect if we can keep from it. Certainly public safety is a huge concern. The email pictures, the Facebook pictures that were on of that party at the park, yeah, that was overboard. People had a right to be concerned. So I want to do something that is going to prevent that from happening, or at least what we could do to try to prevent it from happening. But like these things like movies in the park, concerts in the park, where people can spread out. That's a great thing about that festival shelter. It's so big in the surrounding area where people can spread out. So that, you can maintain social distancing. You've got someone there. I like Jesse's idea about having the, person there that's in charge as far as working that into the ordinance. Now your question gets to, let's say Paul and Jack's or Chicken and Pickle that has a band on Friday or Saturday night on the patio, and they put in about 150 people in there, but they've got social distancing. Does that affect them? If we do it, because I understand we've got to do it citywide. We can't just pick out one department and tell them. I agree with Councilmember Farr on that. So how does that affect? I think you said before a restaurant probably wouldn't be called a mass gathering, Eric.
Again, I hesitate to get into it because we're not experts at city staff. It wasn't my impression that was what was meant by mass gathering in the orders, because restaurants and bars were covered by other parts of their emergency order. But
okay.
So Councilmember Saper, and I think Councilmember DeLong, and then Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Tull.
The reality is that even if you had somebody present from the park board or some other entity, enforcing that among the 250 people who might be there, it's not going to happen. It's a fantasy. And the only way to really enforce that is to limit the number of people that are in a large gathering. Anything else is not going to work.
Well, they had no problems at Symphony on the Sunday, so I'll tell you that.
That was less than 250.
Right, it was, yes.
Yeah, that's my point.
Councilmember DeLong, and then Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Tall.
So this may be for Tom Barzee, and I'm probably going to use the wrong phrase here, but could you not limit it to city-owned public spaces, which would also include the park?
Say that again. Limit.
Could you not limit? Could you not limit the order to public places owned by the city, which would include the parks?
Oh yeah, you could do that. The problem is that you're going to start eliminating other things that you've just talked about.
Yeah, no, I just as we heard that, that was just one thing I was crossing my mind. I'm not totally sure how I feel on this yet, but it's I definitely thought that was one way that some people could achieve what they're going for, would be to do it that way.
Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Tall.
So circling back to having an enforcement presence to allow the gatherings to go up to the limit in the Clay County order. If Paul and Jax had a concert on their back patio and wanted to have over the 50, say we limit it to 50, if they want to have more than 50, they could hire a security officer to enforce the rules. And that would meet the requirement, allowing them to go up above the number that we set. Those kind of things. Now, this is preliminary, so we'd have to have Mr. Barzee draft it before we could vote on anything official. But that's where my thought is, so that we could allow these things that we want, like the symphonies in the parks. If there were more than 100, more than 150 people there, these are the kind of events that there's going to be a presence there for enforcement. There's going to be people are socially distancing, and we wouldn't be limiting those. We also wouldn't be limiting private events if they hire somebody, or if there's going to be security present. They could hire or pay a police officer to provide, or they could hire or pay a park staffer, something along those lines. But they would have to provide that for us to be comfortable with that gathering.
Councilmember Tall.
That's interesting. I'm processing that. I kind of hit it from the other angle, but that sounds promising. So you would expect the person running the space to hire someone to fill that role. Kind of in between that and what Bryant said, I was thinking along the lines that we have more of a responsibility in a public space. So when this happens in a public space and everybody sees it, that's our property, that's our responsibility. So if we could say something like, on city-owned property, groups over 50 are only allowed with supervision for, I don't know how you worded it, but somebody that could enforce social distancing rules. And the events that I've been to that the Parks Department puts on, they do have someone there and they are successfully distancing more than 50 people, but we would just have that in place. I didn't know, Tom, if that would be something that would be workable.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, a couple things. I seen that gathering in person. I drove by that day. You don't want one park person going up to them people and try to enforce anything. It'll turn violent or could. I mean, I've seen on the news people have total meltdowns in public. And hiring somebody is like hiring the fox to guard the hen house. They're paying that person. What's he going to do if they disobey? The park department, if we make a ordinance, which is a law, they have to go by it, whether they want to or not. But I don't like the idea of any public employee. I mean, the cops don't even want to do it. So there's got to be, something there. You don't want a park attendant going up. God, I thought there was 200 people there that day. And, it was to Liberty at graduation party. Why didn't they do it in Liberty? It's probably because they had, rules and regulations there to go by.
Anyone else have any Councilmember DeLong.
So I'm looking through the current order, and I thought it referenced government functions, but I guess that's essential government functions. I was going to say, I guess we could always add an exemption for government-run events specifically as an exception. But as I'm reading the language now, this just covers essential government functions. So I don't know if that's something we could word into that, an exemption or not. That's it.
Councilmember Tall.
I just wanted to say that was a really good point, Mr. Stewart. And I think you're right. Probably for a big private function like that, it would be too much for somebody from the Parks Board. But we already heard that the Parks Board is not going to make any rules on this. And if we can't enforce, the only way we can deal with this is policy. So that's on us as a council, is to come up with a policy that could help restrict these parties. If we don't, what's going to happen is this will happen again. If there are no rules against it, it will happen again.
Councilmember DeLong.
And you've had a chance to talk to the Parks Director since this all kind of broke down, correct? Eric.
To whom are you speaking, sir? To me?
I'm sorry, to Eric, yes.
Yes, I have.
And do you know if they have many more large events already on the books that they're planning on having?
Kelly, and I don't have specific information, but she did indicate that, yeah, there are some, without giving me exact numbers or anything, that there are similar type rentals, which might cause similar type consternation, is kind of what she indicated to me, that are, in the future, that are booked.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Clevenger.
So what it sounds like is they're going to draft an ordinance or draft this and bring it back to us. And then as far as Parks Department, if they have rentals that are over the amount, then they'll have they will have to notify them that they'll have to have someone there to enforce social distancing or cancel the reservation. Is that correct? Does that sound?
Depending upon how the order is constructed per your instructions, I suppose so. Yes, sir. I guess. Councilmember Smith.
Guys, this is a really tough one. The events that have been put on by the park, there's one I think that the library has on the schedule. These events we can pretty well rely on to be managed well. It's really the private events that are becoming concerning. In speaking with Kelly Vatipka, this is not and I hear the allegations, it's all about the money. It's not about the money. This is very low dollar stuff, $50 for a rental of some of the larger spaces in the park. This is not about the money. So if we're looking at restricting things, we've got a few larger gatherings that are upwards of 100 coming up in August. One's hosted by the library. A couple of them are private that are right at that 100 mark. The only move we would have, I see, because the publicly run events are well done, is to limit the private events. But again, I don't know how we do that specifically with the park. It's asking people to behave responsibly when they're unsupervised and they're just not doing it. So in the absence of being able to restrict it, specifically the park, we almost have to go citywide and dial it back.
So would somebody like to make, again, Mr. Barzee would have to actually, compose it, but would you like to give us some specific instruction as to something that you would like to see in a revised order?
That would be on me. And I know it's a tough decision, but we've made lots of tough decisions. I don't think this is the place to stop. We know for sure this will happen again if we don't change the policy. So I would move to restrict mass gatherings to 50 people.
Councilmember DeLong?
To clarify, is this citywide or on public-owned property?
From what I understood to be said was that it had to be citywide. Is that true, Tom? Or can it just be on public property?
we can restrict things on public property. We do it all the time. We have
Okay.
many restrictions that just apply to city-owned property.
Okay, so I need to change that. Can I take that off the table?
Sure, we understand. To restrict mass gatherings to 50 people on public property.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Is it possible to make any sort of exception for those events that are hosted by the park itself or hosted by, say, the library? Or are we just going to cut it at 50? Tom, that would be another question for you. Could we exempt the library and the parks department if they're the host of the event?
So
I know
what you're saying on city-sponsored events, right?
Correct.
I think I can draft something along those lines.
To where it would be private events on public land?
Yeah, let's not word it that way. Except city-sponsored events. Okay, I'll figure out a way to do it.
All right, Councilmember DeLong.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was saying earlier, just an exception for city managed events, or however Tom ends up on that is what I was saying before.
Okay. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I agree. That, if we can't put in specifically shelter specific public spaces, then if we can at least note that if it's a city planned event, whatever those may be, a list of those events, that if we could try to exclude those, because we definitely don't need to punish the people that are absolutely following the rules. That actually takes from our city.
Okay, so I think I'm seeing a consensus, which Mr. Barzee can then go and compose some language, which then you can consider at your next meeting. Does that sound like a way to proceed?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Is there anything else on this item, or shall we move on to the next item? Councilmember Tall, and then Councilmember Smith.
One last thing. Would we be able to do this before our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks? Would this be something that Tom could work on and the mayor could put into effect before 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. But Tom, I mean, because this is the mayor's order, so would you like to speak to that?
Sure. I can't think of a legal reason. You've given him the authority to do this during this health emergency. And he is not making it narrower if he elects to do it. He would be making it more restrictive. I think that's fair to say than what we have now. I think he has that authority, but I want to go back and reread what you've already approved as far as the ordinance goes to make sure I'm not handing something to the mayor that he doesn't have the authority to sign. But I think he does.
Councilmember Smith.
And if it helps, there are no private events over 50 people scheduled before our next meeting. So we're okay with that.
All right. Anything else on this agenda item before we move on? All right, we have our direction, I think. Thank you.
Number 13, Armor Road Complete Street Project, public meeting next steps.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahoto.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At your last meeting on July 7th, you directed staff to kind of transition the previously scheduled in-person meeting for the Armor Road Complete Street Project that was originally going to be on August 11th and to convert that into a virtual City Hall meeting that will be held on September 22nd. In order to do that, we did have to put in several new processes, and we'd like to kind of review those today. Before the City Council, you will find several things attached to this memo. One of them is a meeting plan, a draft postcard. One of the items that the City Council relayed to staff was that you would like to make sure that everybody's aware of this meeting, and you asked that staff conduct a mailing of all the residents and all the businesses businesses in North Kansas City. So inside that packet is a proof copy of the postcard that staff would be ready to issue. The postcard would be 6 inches by 10 inches, and it has instructions and information about the date change and all the ways that the public can provide commentary in advance of the City Council's town hall meeting. We also provided a draft, and I do want to notify that Councilman Smith did point out I'd had a typo on the version that was in here. I very much so apologize for that. Sometimes my fingers get faster than the keys record. So we did update the typo that was on this particular form. What this form is it is a way that people can go online and share their feedback, and then all of these forms would be exported into a single PDF. We would combine it. If you look onto the postcard, we will accept comments 3 different ways. We recognize that not everybody communicates in one channel or likes to provide feedback in one channel. So this form would be on our online website, and we're trying to keep that a nice short URL that people are able to find easily. So it would be nkc.org/armor. Residents can also, or businesses can also email. They can send a note to city@nkc.org, or if they would like to correspond in an analog fashion, they can send us a good old-fashioned letter. And what we would do is we would, as staff, as soon as that cutoff date, and if you notice, we do suggest a cutoff date, that we would collect these comments in any mode that they choose to submit them until 11:59 on Sunday, September 6th. On that Monday, staff would go through and take all of the feedback that we have received in all 3 of these modes, combine it into one large PDF. And then we would submit that to the City Council for their review, as well as post that onto the city's website. That way everybody can see what was provided comment-wise well in advance of September 22nd. We understand that there might be a lot of public comment, and we want to give the City Council enough time to be able to go through, read that correspondence with plenty of time for follow-up should you choose to do that in advance of the town hall meeting. If you guys have any questions or concerns about our process or our timeline, one of the things that was on there also outlines what our communication timeline will be and the budget. Because we didn't have this as part of our budget, we did get a preliminary number to obtain the mailing list. Postcard printing and postage would be $2,100 for notification on this particular City Council meeting. We already have the subscription to the form. We will be using SurveyMonkey to collect the online form, which the city already has a license for. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember DeLong.
More comment. I just want to thank you for putting all this together. It's looked good. I think it's a good thing we have 3 options: the online, email, and email. So we should capture everybody, and sending it out to everyone. Definitely think we'll give everyone an opportunity to reply here. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Smith.
I was curious. I may have missed it. Could we also make sure that we work through key folks that have communication networks like the Business Council and River North to make sure? I know that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 shots or 2 or 3 bites at the apple until somebody gets the message. So if we had, we're mailing it out to the businesses, we also have, Mr. Groves sending one of his emails out, which I'm certain he will. And some others, landlords around town, making sure that no one can say they didn't hear about this, because that was the cardinal problem with the original, is people didn't know about it. So I want to be certain that we're taking every measure to get this message out to as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what I was going to say. Councilmember DeLong.
Okay, one more comment for the 13 people watching on Facebook and probably the millions watching on Channel 2. These comments will be public. So just want to remind people not go too off the rails on some of the commentary, because ultimately this will be public. And I'm guessing, is it going to be public with their names and everything associated to, or is it just going to be the comments, Kim?
It will be associated with their name. It's exactly the same way as if we had held this forum in person. We do require them to say their name, so their name will be associated with this as well.
Okay, just want to make sure everyone's aware that will be out there for everyone to see. So thank you.
Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Smith.
Is there going to be a time limit for their comments like we normally have?
These are going to be written comments, sir. So we will not be limiting the amount of space that they have.
Okay, so none of it be live like it was at the beginning of this meeting?
Correct. The direction that the council gave us at your last meeting was that you would receive input in writing, but that the virtual meeting at which the council will be considering this will not feature a verbal or comment period.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
This is a question for Kim. I'm looking at the form. It looks like only fields 1 and 2 are required. So 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they can fill out at their leisure. They are not required to put something in each box. Is that correct?
Correct. We deliberated about that. We had a small working group here. We didn't want to have to force people to answer a question perhaps they wouldn't want to. Of course, if the city council would like us to make those required fields, we'd be happy to do so.
My only thought would be to make them put something in 7. The rest of it, we at least want to get some kind of comment. I don't know why they would go to it without, but you never know. But it could be fine as is.
Councilmember Tall.
It might be worth, like Mr. Stewart was saying, maybe putting a word limit on the emails, because you can also write in or type in on your own just to help you guys push that out to everybody. You might do like a 500 word limit or something like that, so you don't end up transcribing multiple pages.
Kim, does the limit matter in terms of the work that we would be doing in compiling all of the input?
No, really, the limit wouldn't. I mean, the limit would actually be more beneficial to you as the reader than us, the people who are putting this together.
Then forget I suggested it.
Like I said,
only if it was easier.
Yeah, the Survey Monkey tool is limited on what restrictions you can put on there. And if we were to receive a letter that was 7 or 8 pages long, then I hate to say it, that burden of where to cut that edit off would fall on us. And we may cut something you would have really wanted to read.
So with that, does council approve the program that we've laid out for leading up to the meeting in September? All right, I guess we don't need a vote. If you're okay with it, we'll proceed along those lines, and thank you.
Item 14, budget amendment, emergency sewer repairs, resolution number 20-045.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Public Works Director, Pat Hauber.
Good evening. The 2020 water pollution control budget included $175 for emergency repairs of sanitary and storm sewers. This capital item is budgeted for unforeseen sewer repairs that occur every year. During the first 9 months of fiscal year 2020, there have been more sewer breaks than usual, and 3 of the sewer repairs were extremely costly. 2 force main breaks, one cost $167,767, and one cost $67,000 something. And a break at Armour and Taney, the sewer break cost $78,000. So those were big items, and right now, altogether there have been $380,041 in expenditures to this date. Staff recommends approval of a budget amendment, transferring $300,000 from the gaming fund to WPC fund to erase the deficit and provide $90,959 to cover any additional sewer repairs that may occur the rest of the fiscal year. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Tull.
If you end up not needing the 90,000, that just sits in your reserves, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or Councilmember Clark?
Just right quick, is there any lower no cost preventable measures that you can speak to at all at this time? For the breakdown of what's happened?
Look, anything that we could have been lower cost measures?
No, just thinking from a community perspective, any lower no cost behavioral changes that could occur that you could promote, anything like that that may help to prevent further sewage breakdown or infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't think that's an option.
It's like in addition to this, I'm for approving the budget, but I'm just like, while we're on the topic, if these sorts of things are happening, is there anything that you just comes to mind as like a preventative measure that you could recommend, that's breaking down our infrastructure?
I honestly don't think that there's anything the community could have done to have prevented these infrastructure breaks.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
I think I heard Councilmember Farr and then Councilmember Stewart. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carries. Number 15, okay. Budget amendment, buildings and ground budget, building maintenance, resolution number 20-052.
Thank you. I'd just like to note before we proceed, I've lost Councilmember Saper on video, so.
Currently the iPad is on low battery and I had it reconnected.
All right, sir. Well, if you wanted to be recognized, please express verbally or something.
I will do so. I'm waiting for it to come back.
There we are. Thank you. All right. And I'd like to call on the Public Works Director Hauber for this item.
Yes, this is a budget amendment request for building maintenance. The buildings and grounds building maintenance account is for unanticipated maintenance and repairs at city-owned facilities, including the library, city hall, police station, buildings and grounds maintenance shop, and both fire stations. There's a wide variety of expenditures charged to this account each year, from nuts and bolts to HVAC maintenance replacements. The building maintenance budget began the 2020 fiscal year at $80,000, but due to the excessive number of building repairs and maintenance items that occurred this year, including 2 recent replacements of HVAC rooftop units, the budget has been exceeded by $6,346 with 10 weeks remaining in the fiscal year. Staff recommends approval of a budget amendment appropriating $25,000 from the general fund to building maintenance account to balance the current negative account balance and assure there is adequate funding for maintenance and repair projects through the end of the year.
Are there any questions?
I'll move to approve resolution number 20052.
Second.
I heard DeLong and Smith.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Contract for video investigation of storm sewer pipes, resolution number 20-048.
Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Hauber.
Eric, his
Pat-
battery was running really low, he said on his
All right.
iPad. So
All right. I will address the item and hopefully either Pat can get back on or I can answer questions. So back last year, as many of you will recall, we had issues with the high river table. We had the Missouri River was very high, and that caused groundwater levels within the Paseo Industrial District to 3 feet below the surface, and that created hydrostatic pressure on the storm sewer pipes, and that it resulted in movement and breakage of them below the streets. Those broken pipes then created voids under the sinkholes. It was all a horrible disaster. As a result of that, we budgeted in this year's budget $50,000 for a video of investigation of as many lineal feet of storm sewer pipes located within the PID as the budget amount will allow. The objective is to determine the pipe conditions and whether there are any broken pipes or offset joints in the large concrete stormwater pipes. If we did find that, then we would work to fix the issue. So that is what this item is. It's a prophylactic measure to try to identify problems before they occur, and it is a budgeted item. Do you have any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Number 17, retirement of K9 Tyrell Harrison, resolution number 20-051.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the police chief, Kevin Freeman.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Officer Ryan Hubble is one of our K9 handlers, and he has earned a promotion to the rank of sergeant. We plan on promoting Ryan on August 1st. In conjunction with that move, we have to have some type of an outlet for his K9 partner, Ty. Ty is 11 years old, has been with Ryan for over 9 years now. And the age and the medical issues that come with a K9 of that age makes it difficult for us to try to reassign the K9 to a new handler, and also makes it very difficult for us to market the K9 out just to the general public. So what we have before you tonight is an agreement for Ryan to take over care, custody, and control of the K9. It's an agreement City Councilor Barzee has prepared in the past for us for other K9 retirements. So it basically is just declaring the K9 surplus property and allowing Officer Hubble to take over care of the K9 for the remainder of the K9's life. Happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Councilmember DeLong had a question.
Sorry.
So we have no proclamation recognizing the service of K9 Ty tonight too?
We don't have that prepared tonight, but we can certainly work on one for the next council.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll second Amy's motion.
Okay, Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
It makes me very happy to say yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Wolf, that means yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Number 18, professional services agreement with AP Triton, GEMT cost reimbursement report, resolution number 20-049.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the fire chief, Dave Hargis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item
agreement with the for our GEMT program with AP Consultants. They charge us a flat fee, $7,500 plus 3% of our take back on that. Last year we had dollars back, so we're expecting that more this year. So yeah, I'd love to answer them.
So I know that was hard to understand, Davey. I think maybe your internet service might be a little sketchy, but hopefully the memo was clear. This is a program that we entered into last year. It was extremely successful for us. We realized a substantial amount of revenue as a result, but it is a complicated report to put together, and so it does require consultant assistance. AP Triton did do that for us last year, and as I say, very successfully, so we'd like to do that again. Are there any questions that Chief Hargis or I can answer? I'm sorry for the audio problems, but
okay, I've switched what I'm using, so is that better?
Yes, yeah. It is better.
So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Councilmember Saper?
Yeah, can you give us an estimate of what you've actually recovered in the last years?
Last year, we recovered about $150,000.
So at a cost of $12,000, okay.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties with my internet tonight.
We got to use some of that CARES Act fund to upgrade you. I'll move to approve resolution number 20049.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes, and can I request a bathroom break before the next item?
we'll have to take a vote on it.
Okay.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
8-0. We take a break, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll move for
How long?
How long would you like? 5 minutes, so it's 9:32, so reconvened at about 9:37.
Great.
Right.
Okay, charging up now.
Hey, Dave, I think you're still on.
Are we still live, Eric, on video for the public?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Eric, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
How could we go about putting on the next council agenda the issue that people talked about in terms of the citizen's arrest?
So we will speak to that during staff comments because I know there's been a lot of people bringing it up. But I can tell you, the city councilor, the police chief, and the city attorney, who's our city prosecutor, have been having discussions about this. We will be making a recommendation to you, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Barzee, but I would expect that recommendation would be ready for your next agenda.
I would also be interested in actually having a committee formed to review all such potentially outdated ordinances that we have, particularly relating to public safety.
Well, that would be something council would have to have.
If that could go onto the agenda for the next meeting.
All right, I will put discussion of forming a committee for that purpose on your next meeting agenda.
Thank you. And in future meetings, are we going to need auxiliary batteries for our iPads?
I know that the IT manager does recommend that you keep your iPad plugged in because they do use a lot of juice when you're on Zoom.
Okay. It is now plugged in.
So, Mr. Mayor, would you like to, shall we reconvene?
Reconvene it.
All right, sir.
All right. Item 19, approval of relocation of bus stop on Armour Road.
Thank you. The contract for transportation services between the city and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, KCATA, provides that no passenger amenities or bus stops may be removed or relocated without the agreement or consent from the City Council. At its meeting of May 19th, City Council voted to extend the west outside lane on Armour Road to Knox Street, where there's now a forced right turn. A bus stop was previously located at this location. The KCATA has determined that the bus stop must be moved because they do not locate bus stops on a turn lane. KCATA is proposing to move the bus stop to a location in front of the Taco Bell restaurant, a little bit further east on Armour. Staff recommends approval. Is there any questions?
No.
Councilmember Clevenger? You're muted, sir.
Sorry, just a comment. Wanted to thank the KCATA for relocating the bus stop instead of removing it as originally planned. I had to do a little pushing on that, but several residents were pleased that we're going to be able to relocate it. And that's one of the reasons why I asked that be written into the contract originally for those that haven't been on the council, is that that way, city has some control on the mass transit coming through our city. So.
Councilmember DeLong?
I just want to thank Councilmember Clevenger for his work on this. That's it.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Item 20, change order number 3, Armor Road redevelopment area phase 2B improvements, resolution number 20-043.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
The Armor Road redevelopment area phase 2B improvements project was budgeted this year for $250,000 in the gaming fund. This contract was bid as a unit price contract, and now that the work is largely complete, Mega Industries has brought us a change order that is largely reconciling quantities where they required slightly more of certain items to do the work than was originally estimated. So this change order is just reconciling the final quantities used for the project. The change order amount is $7,945. Which is less than the remaining budget authority for this project. If you were to approve this change order, we would still have $14,747.55 remaining in the budget for the project. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0, motion carried. Item 21, budget amendment, COVID-19 expenses, May and June 2020, resolution number 20-050.
Thank you. I'd like to call on the Finance Manager, Nick Hawkins.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is the second budget amendment related to COVID-19 expenses eligible for reimbursement through the CARES Act. Each month we will submit these expenses to Clay County, but we want to have them approved by you first. This second budget amendment totals $174,097.66, and primarily covers the small business grants and nonprofit assistance grants that were passed by the council in June. It also covers purchase card expenses through May and purchase orders through the month of June. With this being the second installment, we anticipate having another one at one of your meetings in August, but staff recommends approval on this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
8-0. Motion carried. Number 22, approving accounts due and payable by the city through July 17th, 2020. Bill number 7521, ordinance number 9318.
First reading.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through July 17th, 2020.
I move that bill number 7521 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9318
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Toll,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through July 17th, 2020.
Thank you. Next item is staff comments. First, I would like to correct an error due to a misunderstanding on my part. A comment that was submitted to the city earlier today, which I understood to be an inquiry that we answered, was in fact meant as a comment from the public that was meant to be heard earlier in tonight's agenda. So I'd like to read it at this time. It is from Rita D. Pierce. It reads, there has been discussion regarding removing or modifying city ordinances, in particular ordinance 9.12.080. While I agree in principle, the question is whether a city can modify a state law, in this case, MO 563.051. I am not an attorney, but it's my understanding that state law supersedes city ordinances unless the ordinances is more restrictive than the law. Would the city attorney please clarify this issue? Thank you. And I noted earlier during the break that the city attorney and the city attorney, who is our municipal prosecutor, the city councilor, who is our in-house legal counsel, and the police chief have been having discussions about this particular ordinance, as well as another one that was suggested for repeal or modification. And I do anticipate that we will have a recommendation to you on those as to how to proceed on your next agenda. It's not a promise, but that's my expectation. So we are working on those suggestions by members of the public. Also, just would note in your packets is a report from the Northland Assistance Center regarding the aid to individuals and families using CARES funding and how that was distributed in the last month since the council put that program in place. And there's also the upcoming city items of note report that's in your packet. That concludes staff comments. Next item is council member comments, and I'll begin with council member DeLong.
Okay, so that's what I was going to start off with. I had a couple asks for items to be added to the next agenda, and one of them is specifically going to be 9.12.080, which is the private person's use of force in making an arrest. But if that's your intention to already have that in next agenda, then I don't need that ask anymore. Correct. I mean, you're not.
Yes, sir. It will definitely be on an upcoming agenda, and I would like to dispose of this in one way or another sooner rather than later. So, yes.
Okay, and so then I'll ask. I had something longer written, but I'll skip straight to kind of what I'd like to definitely see answered. And what would be the impact of repealing or amending that section? Another question I would have was, has this section been cited as a defense for use of deadly force in North Kansas City previously? And then the final question, which we'll discuss at that meeting, would be, should we consider repeal or amendment of 9.1.080? But if we're already going to have that, then I'm assuming all those things will come up in the conversation anyways.
Yes, sir.
And then the second item I'm going to ask that you add to the agenda is a housing discrimination ordinance that I sent to Tom Barzee late last night. And that would be to include sexual orientation and gender identity to the list of protected classes in housing discrimination. So I sent that to Tom first to make sure that there's not any legal issues, and I was going to forward it along to whoever else needs that as well. So that would be my other ask to have on the next agenda, assuming he's able to answer any legal questions between now and next meeting.
All right, sir. Will do.
Okay. And then finally, I was going to ask about sales tax reports. So I've seen the Missouri Gaming Commission's release their gaming reports, and you receive monthly reports on sales tax collections, correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
How has that been looking?
We're down less than I would have thought. I think we're down around 8.5% for the year. So we are, in our budget that we'll be submitting to you, we're going to be assuming a 10% reduction from what was budgeted this year. But we're actually down a little bit less than 10% for the year.
Okay, that's not bad. And then the gaming report showed what attendance down, but adjusted gross revenue. And of course, I just closed the report like 2 minutes ago. And maybe you've seen that already or looked at that.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a year-over-year change of 3%.
Yeah, the admissions, the revenue from admissions, the dollar ahead was actually a little bit up this month from the same period last year.
Yeah.
But the gaming revenue was down some.
Yeah, but definitely a long road ahead though, and a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen. Just something I keep always looking for numbers and see what's going on. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Saper.
I'm glad we'll be revisiting the public safety issues, and I would like, again, hope we can have a discussion about having a committee look at all public safety ordinances and maybe their revision. That's it.
Councilmember Smith.
I'll add my voice to that. I appreciate the community and that staff is getting ahead of the discussion on that ordinance and other ordinances that may be outdated. So I appreciate that. I look forward to the discussion at next meeting. I also wanted to mention the police forum. Thanks to Chief Freeman and officers who came out and put that on. And I was impressed that we had I'm terrible at head counts. 50 plus came out when it was 95 degrees or so, and socially distanced. A lot of people wearing masks, but good questions, good discussion. And again, I appreciate the chief for his willingness to engage in the community discussion. That's all from me.
Councilmember Tall.
I would agree with that, and I also wanted to thank everybody that has contacted me personally on top of the emails that you've sent out, Eric. There are a lot of tough decisions, and it makes it easier to know which direction that the citizens want us to go in when they reach out to us. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Clevenger.
I'd also like to echo Jesse's comments on the police forum. I think we had really good discussion. The officers were very frank and very approachable. Chief Freeman did a great job. Another thing that I would like to bring up, maybe, and it's maybe for our budgeting purposes, and it's certainly not going to be feasible right now with the COVID-19 and the social distancing because we're meeting virtually, but there are, our boards and commissions have meetings, and, before there's been a desire by citizens to have those meetings live streamed or videoed or accessible for view if you can't make the meeting. I know that some of our members on the Parks Board, they don't have computers, and it'd be difficult to add equipment to the Parks building. Maybe they could meet at City Hall at a certain night. I know the Planning Commission's already online. The Library Board, either meet in the library or meet at City Hall. But I'd just like to gauge or have some discussion in the future about possibly getting different board meetings, either online for viewing or on the YouTube channel or on Channel 2. And that's all I have tonight.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'd like to say, backing up those first two ladies' comments at the meeting about the ordinances, citizens arrest. I've never been a fan of citizens arrest. Citizens make mistakes and they don't know the law, one thing. And they usually carry over to not only an arrest, where a police officer makes an arrest, he doesn't sentence somebody and punish them either. The citizens have it. That's where lynching came from. And just that recently, that one lady talked about the father and son that murdered that young black man. They said he was stealing, and he was not stealing. So even if he was stealing, it's not a death penalty. If a police officer did it, I'm totally against citizens arrest. You always have the law on your side. You can defend yourself up to including killing somebody if you have to. But citizens arrest, I think it ought to be off the books. That's what we got police officers for. And I've never, you know, I worked for the city 38 years, and I've never seen a problem with our police department. So maybe somebody else has, but I haven't. That's all I got.
Councilmember Clark.
I don't think I could say it better. Rich, that was great. Yeah, I completely agree. I love the ordinances that are coming up, and I'm glad that we are a council that's completely open to, within our means, abolishing those. So that's all I have to say. I think we covered a lot of good stuff tonight, especially in the limitation on gatherings.
Councilmember Farr.
Just want to say congratulations to our retired employee. Hope he goes and has a nice relaxing time in his backyard. That's all I have to say.
And Mayor Stila.
I don't have any comments tonight. Thank you.
All right. So we'll like to talk to you after you've made your vote to go into executive session about how to do that, but you do have that item on the agenda.
Item 26, consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statutes, section 610.0212.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Saper,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Tull,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So Stephen, check me on this, but I believe the procedure that needs to be followed at this point is for the council members to join the Zoom meeting for which they received the link from Kim Nakahoto, several hours ago now, and leave the meeting that we are currently in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And all right. And then after the when we are ready to come out of the executive session and adjourn, the council members will need to rejoin the meeting that we are currently in. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct as well.
All right. So if you would all please go to that, and we will see you shortly in the other meeting. Thank you.
Tom, I'll come over and help you.
Thank you.
Here's what you can sign tomorrow.
I'm leaving the meeting.
You're it, Mayor.
He's
You guys are coming back in. Let's see who all makes it.
Yeah. What do we need? 5 of us to dismiss?
That's right. You only need 5, right? Everybody seems to be popping in. We are live, by the way, so just keep that in mind. Still live, I should say.
Thanks for doing this, Stephen. I know it's been a tricky one.
It's always a learning experience.
That's working pretty well, I think.
It went smooth. All right, I'm gonna hop off.
Well, I see a quorum, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Yes.
Have a good night, everyone.